Hi, friends. Welcome to the last read aloud of this knowledge domain. And it is about endangered species and how we are hurting our planet and how we can help our planet. So, I want you to think about what happens to living things when their habitat changes. For instance, what do you think might happen to a plant or an animal if the surroundings changed? So think about the Arctic habitat. What if the ice started to melt? And remember, that's where the polar bears hunt for seals. Or what if the muskox suddenly were in hot weather and it has its heavy fur coat? Or what if the Arctic hare was no longer in the Arctic habitat? Would its white coat help it still? Um, what if walruses and seals didn't need the blubber anymore to stay warm? What would that look like? So, blubber, heavy fur, and camouflage are all ways that Arctic animals have adapted to cold weather. And do you think that these adaptations that they've made might make it harder to live in different weather or new weather? What do you think about that? Okay. So, we are going to share today about why and how habitat destruction can cause extinction of animals. And extinction of animals is when they're no longer around. So it wasn't too long ago that the very last white rhinoceros, male white rhinoceros, was killed. And so there will not be any more white rhinos after that, which is very sad. So, in this story, you guys need to listen carefully to find out how habitat changes have affected the bald eagle, which is our national bird. So, let's take a look at our vocabulary words before we get started. And our first one is endanger. Endanger, not in danger, but endanger. And that means to put in danger or harm's way. So, for instance, um, if an animal is hunted too much, it could become endangered, which means that if the hunting continues, it might no longer exist. An endangered species is one that it has such small numbers that it might not be around for that much longer. And then extinction, here's a picture of the dinosaurs. Extinction means it's the end of a species of a plant or an animal because they're all dead. So that's really sad. So we need to find out what we can do in order to save our plants and animals on our planet and do a better job about this. So let me switch screens and let's start this read aloud. So for now, I am going to hide my picture and we can see Rattenborough flying around in space. So let's see what he has to say. Rattenborough here, delivering the final installment of our exciting habitats adventure. We have traveled all around the world looking at some of the different habitats where plants and animals live. A lot of those habitats, such as the Arctic and the Sonoran Desert, have climates to which you and I would have a tough time adapting. Remember, climate means the type of weather a place has over a long period of time. How would you have a tough time adapting to the Arctic, to the desert? As we've seen, there are different living things in each habitat we visited. And because some living things are so well adapted to the conditions of their specific habitat, any large change in their surrounding could make it hard for them to survive. Just think what would happen if it got even a little colder in the desert. Some of those animals who are so good at keeping cool wouldn't know how to stay warm. Or what if it stopped raining in the rainforest? What would happen to all those plants that need lots of water? Or What if something happened to the food chain of a certain animal? If that animal relied on a certain type of plant or animal to eat, and that plant or animal was no longer around for that animal to eat, that animal would no longer have the food that it would need to survive. Sometimes habitats change because the temperature or the weather changes. But unfortunately, people often affect habitats as well. Whether we realize it or not, people can make it very difficult for plants and animals to survive. So let's see what we can learn. I showed you this slide for just a little bit on the other lesson. From cutting down trees or starting forest fires to dumping dangerous waste and chemicals into our rivers, people's actions can endanger lots of species of plants and animals. And remember, friends, to endanger plants and animals means to put them in a dangerous situation. So people's actions can harm or even kill lots of plants and animals. And sometimes, friends, we don't even realize that what we're doing could be harmful to our environment. Sometimes people's actions destroy entire habitats. To destroy something means to completely ruin it. For example, someone walking in a forest might light a match and drop it, and then the whole forest might burn. Here, the word match means a thin piece of wood with a special tip that produces a fire. And even if they were not harmed by the fire itself, many animals that used to live in trees would no longer have a place to live in. When they lose their homes, animals find it much harder to continue to live in a particular habitat. If they can't find new places to live, the animals will not survive. After a while, there will be fewer and fewer of these kinds of animals alive in the wild. And when that happens, we say that they have become an endangered species. A species is a group of living things that have similar characteristics. So, an endangered species is a group of living things that could die out completely. We say that these species are endangered for a very good reason. They are in danger of extinction, and extinction means the end of a species because all of its members have died. An animal or plant that is extinct has died out and does not exist anywhere in the world anymore. So, if we think about the dinosaurs, that is exactly what we are talking about. Okay, let's take a look at a picture of our national bird, this beautiful bald eagle, which we do have here in our state. I'm on a mission to tell you about one animal that can teach us a lot about endangered species and how to save them. I have come here to Washington State in the northwestern part of the United States to show you an amazing bird called a bald eagle. Look up at that tree and you will see one of these eagles perched on the very top branch. You may recognize the bald eagle because it is one of the national symbols of our country. Drawings of the eagle appear as a symbol on American money and in many other places. Believe it or not, the bald eagle was almost extinct in the United States just several years ago. If that had happened, there would be no more bald eagles still living. So we're grateful to be able to spot this bald eagle today. Yes, and we're lucky that we have so many that live around here. Bald eagles are scavengers. That means they'll eat dead animals that other animals have left. Ugh, they'll eat stuff that's left on the side of the road. They're like vultures. But they also eat rats and other small animals, so I'd better stay out of the way. I think that the bald eagle looks very grand, don't you? This means that the bald eagle looks very impressive because of its size and importance. The bald eagle is covered with dark brown feathers, and its head and tail are both white. Bald eagles are some of the largest birds living in this country. They can grow up to 3 feet tall, which is almost as tall as a first grader. Wow, this one is just taken off into the air, and you can see that it has huge wings. In fact, their wings can spread to about 8 feet in length. While this eagle is flying around, let me tell you more about these special birds. So, friends, this is a housing development like what you would find in a bigger city. There used to be thousands of bald eagles in the United States, but farmers started to hunt them because they thought the eagles were killing their farm animals. Then later, people started to cut down the trees in which the eagles build their nests. They cut down the trees to make way for roads and houses and shopping malls. Do you think that this caused problems when people cut down the trees that the eagles built their nests in? Give me a thumb up if you think this caused a problem. You're right, it did. With fewer places for eagles to make their homes, they found it harder and harder to survive, and they started to die out. Soon, there weren't very many bald eagles left in the whole United States. People started to notice that there were fewer and fewer bald eagles, and they decided to find out why. Why do you think that the eagles were dying out? Let's see. So scientists began to study the eagles, and they discovered two things. When scientists discover things, they learn new information. The first thing they discovered was that a lot of eagles don't have enough room to build their nests. Eagles do not like to live in the same area as other eagles, so they build their nests far away from each other. They like places that are very peaceful, and they need huge, strong trees that can hold nests big enough for the adults and their babies to live. The scientists also discovered that the eagles didn't have enough room in the areas where they had been living because the people were chopping down trees in order to build roads and buildings. People were destroying the bald eagle's habitat. Give me a thumb up if that's what you predicted was the reason. Yeah. Although I don't think I knew about eagles having territories. That's interesting. The other thing that scientists found out was that something bad was getting into the bald eagle's food supply. Farmers sometimes use chemicals to keep bugs from eating their crops. One chemical, though, made the eggs that the eagles laid much thinner and easier to break. So, because of this, many eagle eggs were breaking before they could hatch. No one knew before then that the chemical was hurting the eagles, but it was. Ooh, that's kind of scary. Okay, so there's the farmers. I'm sorry, friends, I forgot to turn the page. So the farmers are spraying the chemicals. Okay. And then, of course, if there's mice in those fields and the mice would have the chemicals on them, and then the eagles would eat the mice with the chemicals and it would get inside the eagles' bodies, and that's why their eggs were so thin. Luckily, the scientists found out which chemical was harming the eagles' eggs. And using the scientists' information, the United States government made laws to protect the bald eagle and its habitat so that the eagle's food no longer contained the harmful chemical. Thanks to these laws, more eagles were born, and the numbers of eagles started to rise again. Now, bald eagles have made an amazing comeback. They're thriving once again, but people must always be careful to protect their habitat. Beautiful bird. This bald eagle has returned to its nest up in the tree. Maybe it has some chicks up there that need to be fed, or maybe it's just trying to keep warm. It's pretty chilly. And speaking of returning to the nest, I'm afraid it's time for me to go home now. I've really enjoyed our trip around the world's habitats, and I hope that you have too. Mrs. Rattenborough and my kids miss me, and to tell the truth, it's been a dangerous expedition for me. I'll be glad to head out of danger and into the safety of my lovely home under the steps. Home, sweet home. Or maybe I should say, habitat, sweet habitat. All right. So, friends, let me bring my camera back up. So I hope that made you think about just simple things that we can do to make habitats better for our animals. We already do a really good job about not littering, and we have to think about dumping icky water into fresh water. It all adds up. So if we all do our job to try to keep the world a cleaner, better place, it helps the animals too. So this is the last read aloud of this domain, but the next two lessons, I will find some activities and read